There's a person you probably know. Maybe it's someone in your life. Maybe quietly it's you. They don't say much in group settings, not because they have nothing to say, but because by the time the conversation catches up to where their mind already is, the moment has passed. They stay up too late, not scrolling, not distracted, but thinking, following a thought somewhere it wasn't supposed to go. They seem calm, almost detached, while everyone around them is reacting. And yet, alone, they feel everything with an intensity that's almost difficult to explain. We've built a very specific image of what high intelligence looks like. The person with all the answers, moving through the world without friction. But psychology tells a quieter, stranger, more human story. The minds that process the most are also the minds that carry the most. And the habits that make them seem different, the solitude, the overthinking, the discomfort in shallow spaces, those aren't flaws that developed despite their intelligence. They developed because of it. This is what actually happens inside a mind built to go deeper than most. Habit number 1. They think in connections, not categories. There's a kind of thinking that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't feel like work. It just happens, while you're in the shower, while you're driving, while someone is talking to you about something completely unrelated. A thought appears, and instead of letting it pass, the mind follows it. Down one level, then another, until you've arrived somewhere that has almost nothing to do with where you started. Psychologists call this associative thinking, the ability to link ideas across completely separate domains. And in people with extremely high IQ, it isn't occasional. It's constant. It's the default setting of a mind that can't experience an idea in isolation, because every idea is already touching something else. This is why highly intelligent people so often seem scattered in conversation. They're not distracted. They're 3 connections ahead, and they're trying to decide whether it's worth explaining the path they just took to get there. Usually, they decide it isn't. So they stay quiet. They nod. And internally, they're somewhere else entirely. It looks like inattention. What it actually is a mind that never learned to stay inside one room when it can already see the hallway beyond it. Habit number 2. They refuse to give simple answers to complex things. You've probably seen this. A highly intelligent person who takes longer to make a decision than everyone else in the room. Who qualifies every statement. Who says, "It depends," when everyone else has already moved on. From the outside, it can seem like uncertainty. Like they don't know what they think. But watch more closely, and you'll see something different. They're not undecided. They're holding more variables than anyone else is even aware exist. They've already run the scenario forward, found the flaw, revised it, found another flaw, revised again. By the time they speak, they've processed something that most people would need 3 separate conversations to work through. The philosopher Isaiah Berlin wrote about 2 kinds of minds: the hedgehog, who knows one big thing with total certainty, and the fox, who knows many things and understands that the truth is almost never simple. People with extremely high IQ tend to be foxes. Not because they lack conviction, but because they've looked at a thing from too many angles to pretend it only has one. This nuance, this refusal to oversimplify, is not weakness. It's one of the rarest forms of intellectual honesty there is. It just doesn't look impressive in a world that rewards quick, confident answers. Habit number 3. They recharge in silence, not in crowds. There's something that happens in social settings that highly intelligent people rarely talk about, but almost universally experience. The room is fine. The people are fine. The conversation is perfectly normal. And yet, something in them is quietly straining. Like holding their breath underwater. Like walking at half their natural pace so they don't leave everyone behind. Small talk, for these minds, is not relaxing. It's effortful. Not because they think they're above it, but because their mind operates at a depth that surface-level conversation can't reach, and staying up there, deliberately, for an extended period of time, takes actual energy. What replenishes that energy is solitude. Not loneliness, solitude. There's a difference. Loneliness is wanting connection and not having it. Solitude is choosing the quiet because the quiet is where the mind can finally be exactly what it is, without performing a simpler version of itself for the comfort of a room. Psychologist Elaine Aron's research on sensory processing sensitivity found that highly intelligent individuals often experience what she described as a thinner filter between themselves and the world. More input comes in, more is processed, more is felt, and the nervous system, never asked to carry all of this, learns to seek relief. The solitude isn't antisocial behavior. It's the nervous system coming home. Habit number 4. They don't have hobbies. They have obsessions. Ask someone with an extremely high IQ about their interests, and pay attention to what happens. It won't be a list of hobbies. It will be one thing, or maybe two, that they know with an almost unsettling depth. The complete history of a particular architectural period. The physics of a specific sport. The entire creative evolution of an artist most people stopped thinking about 20 years ago. And they won't just know it, they'll light up talking about it in a way they rarely do about anything else. This is not eccentricity for its own sake. It's regulation. When a highly intelligent mind finds a subject it can go all the way into, something settles. The constant scanning stops. The restlessness quiets. For once, the depth the mind wants to reach is actually available. It doesn't have to hold back. It doesn't have to simplify. It can just go, fully, completely, without a ceiling. These deep obsessions are, in a very genuine psychological sense, the place where the mind rests. They're not distractions from life. For certain kinds of minds, they're how life becomes bearable. Habit number 5. They feel everything but show very little. But here's the part nobody tells you. High intelligence is not a purely cognitive experience. It never was. The same neural architecture that allows a mind to process information more deeply also processes emotion more deeply. And this is something that almost every highly intelligent person has had to quietly figure out on their own, because it doesn't fit the story we've been told about what intelligence is supposed to look like. They feel things more. A piece of music doesn't just sound beautiful, it does something physical. An offhand comment doesn't land and pass, it stays. The news isn't just information to be filed away. It follows them through the day like a weight they didn't choose to carry. And because none of this matches the image of the cool, logical, unaffected intellect, they learn to translate feeling into the language that feels safer. They package emotion as analysis. They process grief as a question. They turn anxiety into a problem to be solved. Not because they're cold, but because the emotional world, for them, is so vivid and so loud that containing it in ideas is sometimes the only way to keep it from becoming overwhelming. This emotional depth is invisible to most people. But it's there. It has always been there. And it shapes everything about how they move through the world, quietly and completely. Habit number 6. Their mind never fully clocks out. There's a word that appears again and again in the research on high intelligence. Not genius. Not creativity. The word is rumination. The return. The thought that was supposed to be finished 3 days ago and still isn't. The conversation replayed, not because it went badly, but because it wasn't quite right. The words weren't precise enough. The meaning didn't fully land, and that incompleteness is something the mind simply cannot leave alone. It looks like anxiety. It sometimes is anxiety. But underneath it is something more specific, a mind that is fundamentally oriented toward resolution, toward the feeling of something fully understood, fully processed, fully closed. And because the world offers that feeling very rarely, because most things are genuinely open and uncertain and without clean endings, the mind keeps returning. The way a tongue returns to a loose tooth. Not to make it worse. Just because it's there, and it isn't finished yet. This is why so many highly intelligent people find it difficult to sleep. Not insomnia in the clinical sense, but the specific experience of lying down and finding that the mind has simply continued without them. Working, connecting, returning. It was never given permission to stop. Habit number 7. They choose very few people but go very deep. Watch how a highly intelligent person navigates a relationship. A real one, not a polite one, and something becomes clear very quickly. They don't have many, but the ones they have go deep in a way that's almost difficult to describe. They remember the small things. The shift in your tone 3 weeks ago that you thought nobody noticed. The thing you mentioned once, briefly, that you'd half forgotten yourself. They are quietly, intensely attentive, not because they're performing care, but because the same mind that goes all the way into ideas goes all the way into people. The person who seems unreachable in a crowd is, in private, one of the most present, most loyal, most perceptive people you will ever sit across from. They chose you carefully. And having chosen you, they pay attention in a way that most people simply aren't built to sustain. The social selectivity isn't coldness. It's investment. They don't spread themselves thin across many connections because they know, intuitively, that real depth requires everything they have, and they can only give that to a few. Habit number 8. They've always felt slightly out of step with the world. There is a particular kind of discomfort that follows a highly intelligent person through childhood, through adolescence, and often well into adult life. It's the feeling of not quite fitting, of being in rooms that were designed for someone slightly different, of having to slow down, to simplify, to flatten, not because anyone explicitly asked, but because they learned early that being fully what they are makes people around them uncomfortable in ways that are hard to name and harder to navigate. And so they adapt. They become skilled at appearing to be somewhere they aren't. They develop a version of themselves that moves at the right speed, laughs at the right moments, asks the questions that fit the room. And they keep the rest, the depth, the restlessness, the emotional intensity, the relentless inner noise, somewhere quieter. Somewhere only they can see. But something shifts with time. Not the mind. The mind stays exactly the same. What changes is the relationship with it. With enough years, many highly intelligent people stop trying to fold themselves into spaces that were never built for them. They start building, slowly, carefully, a life that fits around who they actually are. Work that uses the full range of what they can do. People who don't need them to be less. Environments where the quiet doesn't need an explanation. And the habits that once felt like problems, the depth, the selectivity, the need for silence, the thinking that never stops, they begin to feel like simply the shape of a particular kind of mind. One that sees more, feels more, processes more, and has always, quietly, been doing the very best it could with all of it. None of this needs to be fixed. The mind that can't stop thinking isn't broken. The person who prefers one real conversation over 10 shallow ones isn't antisocial. The one who feels too much isn't weak. The one who always needs to go deeper isn't difficult. Some minds just go further than most. And that distance, the one that sometimes feels like loneliness, like not belonging, like being permanently slightly out of step with a world that seems perfectly fine moving at half the speed you need, that distance was never the problem. It was always just the view from somewhere most people haven't been.